Okay, welcome to Good Food on Earth's YouTube channel. Today we have Ashley Madden of Rise.Shine.Cook with us. So Ashley, you're a pharmacist, holistic nutritionist, trained plant-based chef, certified yoga instructor, and self-trained food photographer. You've written recipes and articles for Forks Over Knives, Thrive, Mind Body Green, Healthline, Home and Cabin magazine, and Vegan Lifestyle magazine. And I know that you've recently helped Green Kitchen in downtown St. John's to develop some new menu items, and that you've just finished photographing a vegan cookbook coming out in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome.
Thank you.
First question is, did you grow up here in Newfoundland?
I did. I grew up in St. John's, and I've lived here most of my life, but I guess the last 10 or 15 years, I've kind of moved around a lot.
Cool. And what foods did you grow up eating?
Oh my God, not great ones. I would say my diet until I was like 13 was pretty much like Kraft dinner and toast. I think I'm really picky eater. And then I kind of got really interested in health when I hit my teen years. But my idea of healthy food was also very skewed. I have memory of a lot of lean cuisine, frozen meals, and like carnation breakfast shakes, like stuff that kind of makes me like really like disappointed now. But back then we didn't have all the kind of knowledge that we do today about what healthy eating is. So I guess needless to say, I didn't grow up eating a lot of colorful foods or anything like that. A lot of vegetables, fruits.
Right. And what could you say your experience was like? Do you remember how did you feel when you were eating those foods? Or
I think that I used to eat a lot of cereal and milk. Skim milk, of course, because I thought that was the healthiest. So I ate a lot of milk and drank a lot of milk when I was younger. And I always remember around like mid-morning to lunchtime just feeling like so logy and awful and tired. And I do specifically remember when I switched, when I like gave up milk, I remember just thinking, oh my God, that's what that was. So I don't really have any memories of like low energy or anything like that because I was so young, and you're so resilient when you're so young. And I changed my diet pretty early on in my young adulthood. But yeah, I definitely have a specific memory of giving up the milk feeling.
right.
Yeah.
So when you were 23, you were diagnosed with MS.
I
Uh,
was.
yeah, and most doctors would say that MS is an incurable autoimmune disease, and you're prescribed some pretty harsh medications that you basically have to take for the rest of your life to manage it.
Yeah.
So could you tell us what was your experience after your diagnosis?
Yeah, so it's a pretty scary diagnosis. So the beginning was very emotional, a lot of fear. So I definitely took the advice of the physicians that were helping me, and they were amazing. The neurologists were amazing, but I did go on medication. So I was on a needle, an injectable needle, intramuscular injection once a week for about 7 years. But shortly after starting medication, and kind of when I got over the shock of, the diagnosis and of the, potential for progression and what that could mean for me, when I finally came to terms with the diagnosis, that's when I started to really question, okay, how did this come about? What can I do to prevent progression? What can I do to improve my overall health? And that's kind of when I just started Googling and reading and then finding forums online. And what really shifted things for me, and this might not be a resource you're aware of, but for MS patients, I think it's fabulous. It's the Overcoming Multiple Sclerosis program. It's a program out of Australia. It has an amazing, super resourceful website. So once I kind of started digging around there, the connection between food and health and everything, and I just felt, I was so interested in it that essentially, the MS diagnosis and my desire to care for myself in a new way shifted, my personal life, but also my career.
Yeah. So you changed your diet. you eat a whole food plant-based diet now.
Mhm.
How has that affected your MS and your life overall?
I'll start with life overall first. It's been, oh my God, amazing, freeing. I'm not sure. I used to um, be so concerned and have to make, I feel like I had to make so many decisions around food all the time. But, it's been so long now. But I feel like shifting to a whole foods plant-based diet was so easy. I was shocked at how delicious everything was and is. Um, and when I did it, I mean, I guess the people around you see what you're doing and they become curious. And my husband, mostly eats the way I do. My sister eats the same way. I have other family members who kind of eat the same way now. So it's become, uh, popular amongst my family, and it's kind of shifted all of our lifestyles. It's also made me more aware of, animal ethics, environmental issues. The benefits of going to a whole food plant-based diet are, beyond the scope of health, even though, health is what brought me there. In terms of MS, so I haven't had any progression since my diagnosis, which was about 11 years ago. So that's great. I'm not on any medication anymore. I've been off medication now for almost 4 years. Not that I am encouraging anybody with MS or any autoimmune disease to come off medication. That's definitely a very serious decision. And I did talk to my doctors about that. And I had to, contemplate the decision myself a lot before I did. But I've been off medication for 4 years and I feel great. And I feel empowered. I feel like I'm doing something to not just help MS, but also to prevent a lot of the chronic diseases that are, kind of exploding in every developed country, like heart disease, obesity, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. When you did some research for MS, I think we talked about Dr. Roy Swank.
Yes.
What can you tell us about some of his work?
Right. So I might get the specifics a bit messed up. It's been a long time since I read his studies, but the Overcoming Multiple Sclerosis program is actually kind of the foundation is Swank's studies. So Dr. Swank, oh my God, how many years ago was this? In like the 40s or something? This was I think it was the late 40s, 1948 or 49 or something. Did a study. He divided a group of people into two groups. One group he put on a very low fat, low saturated fat diet. And then the other group were just, sent off and told to eat however they wanted. So these were MS patients, of course.
Mhm.
And then, 50 years later, 40 years later, whatever the follow-up was, again, specifics, I can't be held accountable for. The group of people who maintained that extremely low saturated fat diet actually had very little progression. They were all thriving in their 80s. And so that, I think, is probably the starting point of the connection between food and MS, or it was for me in my research. And, when you read that, the hope that you get, that you can change or that you might have some control over the direction of your disease is, it's quite positive.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because I think 50% of patients within 10 years who have MS are unable to walk unassisted, or they're wheelchair or bedbound or dead, basically. So to be able to do something with your diet, which is something anybody can control, that's pretty empowering.
So empowering. It's also something that's so available. It's available to all of us. It doesn't have any side effects.
Mhm.
It's really amazing. And I think that more people need to be encouraged to consider the option of, diet and lifestyle change for these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is it that you normally eat in a day?
Okay. So, like you said, or in your introduction, I am a plant-based chef. So I do a lot of like recipe development and experimenting. So I day to day, I'm eating all kinds of things because I'm experimenting with plant-based recipes. I try and make all of my recipes oil-free and gluten-free. Gluten-free essentially just to accommodate a lot of the other people who are looking to help their health issues. And a lot of those people end up wanting gluten-free foods. So I guess I could go based on a day. I can tell you what I ate yesterday.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So for breakfast yesterday, I had oatmeal. I made oatmeal out of just rolled oats and water and cinnamon, some almond milk, blueberries and bananas. That was breakfast. Lunch, I had leftover supper from the night before, which was brown rice with a chickpea chana masala kind of thing. So just like diced tomatoes, chickpeas, tons of spices, carrots, onions, celery, and spinach. That's what I had for lunch. And then last night for dinner, we had baked potato, a smoked paprika baked tofu, just chopped up some tofu and baked it in the oven, and a ginormous arugula salad. Then I had for a snack, I think I had a banana and almond butter. That's it. Yeah.
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 And those foods, they sound delicious.
Yeah, I don't ever feel deprived. And I mean that, I try and convey that when I'm explaining this to people. I get as much satisfaction or more out of what I eat now as to what I would get, when you go through like McDonald's drive-through, or to have pizza with real cheese on it and that kind of thing. Like I don't feel at all. There are substitutes that are equally satisfying, I think, for everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you do recipe development, but like for when you started becoming whole food plant-based and to this point now, how do you find preparing meals? How did you find it when you started, and how do you find it now?
So when I started, I think I had this perspective, which is good, and I think it's what I tell other people to focus on as well. Right from the beginning, I'm focused on what I could eat and eventually what I wanted to eat versus what I couldn't eat. So I think breakfast is a meal that's easy for everybody, because a lot of the stuff that we have is already kind of in that realm of plant-based. You can have whole wheat toast, oatmeal, cereals, that kind of thing, fruit. For me, I think I had to dig a little bit more for like dinner ideas, for supper ideas. So I think that in the beginning I did okay, but I definitely took my time to prepare and think about mentally, for what I was going to have. But I don't remember ever struggling in the beginning either, because there's so many really quick, easy things you can do, like put some nut butter and jam in a pita bread, done, or like just throw a salad together, or make this stir fry you would always make, just leave the meat out and skip the oil. So just things like that. And of course too, things that are very helpful are, if you can get your hands on a good cookbook that can help you think of, things that are familiar to you. I always tell people to start with familiar recipes. Don't try something, totally foreign to you. If you liked, spaghetti and meatballs before, then try and make spaghetti and like meatballs or bean balls or whatever.
Yeah. And so, like some typical Newfoundland things like Jig's dinner, baked beans, or split pea soup, those can all be whole food plant-based.
Absolutely. Actually, so my family's like quite traditional in that way. My mom cooks Sunday dinner every Sunday. So with, peas pudding, turnip, carrot, potatoes. And now my mom eats very similar to me. And so we just make it without the salt beef. And usually we make some kind of like bean patty or like a bean nut loaf or something like that. And we make our own vegan gravy, and we still do it. And we all, the people who don't want to eat the plant-based version, we all eat together. It's still very, very doable. And it looks familiar. This plate looks very much the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And just recently, this past Thanksgiving, my partner, his sister, she always makes Thanksgiving supper, and she cooked all of the vegetables, the Jig's dinner type vegetables, without any salt beef. And both her and her husband said that they actually tasted a lot better.
You absolutely, you don't miss it. And what you're getting like on the vegetables from cooking them with salt beef, it's not worth, the risk. The reward is not that good. So
Mhm.
that's definitely an easy swap that everybody can do.
So we've talked a little bit about your family and their reaction to your change in diet and lifestyle and how they've sort of been affected by that too. Um, did you initially have trouble with support in the beginning or not too much?
I have to say I was pretty lucky in that I had a lot of support.
Mhm.
Um, I made this shift, and for different people, it works differently. For me, I made this shift overnight. One day I decided this is what I'm doing. The next morning I woke up and I never looked back. So the day that I woke up and said to my husband, this is what I'm doing, he was like, okay, me too. So that was very helpful to have support in the home. Um, and then once I explained, I think it's important to explain to people what you're doing and why, as opposed to kind of trying to force your opinion or your new learned knowledge on other people. I have found that I communicate more by doing and having people watch what I do and then try what I'm eating.
Mhm.
Um, and then the other thing was that I found extended family and friends also so supportive. And I would even venture to say that when you go out to eat, if communicate what your needs are in a polite way, that most places will do everything they can to accommodate you and to support you. And then I would like to add too on this note is that you don't need to apologize. I find a lot of people apologize sometimes and say, I'm sorry, I can't eat that. Or like, I hope that, I just think it's really, if you're making these shifts in your own life, it's really amazing. It's really inspiring. And I think you need to own it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's I think it's can be hard for some people when they find that like their spouse or their children or their parents don't really understand why they're making the change, or they think, why can't you just eat real food? But I think you're right, it's the approach that people have, and just to like own it and
Yeah.
say, this is what I'm going to do for myself, and that doesn't change like how I feel about anybody else,
Yep.
and
Exactly.
uh, just go for it. Yeah. But
Exactly.
you also had a lot of, I guess, you talked about a website from Australia for MS, and did you get a lot of support from there too?
Absolutely. That's mostly why I promote the website. In addition to the amazing information they have there for newly diagnosed people, especially when you have so many questions, there's so many unknowns, there's so much information there. Um, they have forums there as well on diet, on things like meditation, exercise, and yeah, the community is amazing, so supportive. Whenever I have or whenever I had clients with MS, or I would just end up chatting, or somebody would find me, because that happens a lot too. I get messages a lot from people with MS. That is always the first thing that I send them and tell them to go have a read, because it's a really, really great website.
Yeah, I think you're going to have another great resource coming out possibly in the summer. There, a Dr. Rise.Shine.Cook from New York has completed a documentary. It's called Code Blue. She was diagnosed with MS herself, and her neurologist had told her there's nothing she could do with diet and that she needed to take the drugs. But she looked into the medical literature, and it was a few years afterwards that she changed her diet. She was able to run a marathon, or a half marathon, I believe. So her documentary will be coming out. Anybody could go to their website, Code Blue.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and that will be a great resource. It addresses the lack of nutrition knowledge in the medical profession, and I believe she's going to tell some of her personal story too.
Yes, I'm actually familiar with her.
Mhm.
Um, I did find her and her practice when I was diagnosed, but I wasn't aware of the documentary, so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I think they almost finished wrapping it up, so they're going to do some screening
It's going to
soon.
be great.
Yeah. So let's see. We talked about preparing meals and what you eat in a day. So what resources do you use for inspiration for recipes and nutrition science?
I think in the beginning, Forks Over Knives was a really great resource for me, both the cookbook and the documentary and the website. And now they have magazines that come out quarterly, I believe. So that was definitely a really big help in the beginning. I really love nutritionstudies.org as well. That's really great. And Dr. McGregor is another person that I am really fond of. I love his approach. He gets right down to the meat of it. And his book, How Not to Die, I just think that's really great as well. So I suggest that to a lot of people. And I also do a lot of my own research as well, coming from a pharmacy background, research, evidence-based science or health science. I kind of do a little digging myself too when something new comes out or I'm a little curious about something, which I don't think is necessary for everybody. That's why people like Dr. McGregor kind of break it down for you and give you the evidence. And then for inspiration for food, I think that right now there's so many places where you can get inspiration for food, especially like plant-based communities on things like Instagram and, and even on Facebook. You can find so many groups of people just sharing different kinds of recipes. I'm at the point now where I like to be a little bit more inventive and creative. So I kind of think of things like off the cuff. But I would say that ultimately my biggest inspiration for recipes is just things tasting good and, cravings for other things. I still love like lasagna and mac and cheese and pizza and, like chocolate kinds of desserts. But I just make them all with really nutrient dense ingredients and, healthy foods, plant-based foods.
So how do you make mac and cheese?
So my favorite way to make mac and cheese is I make the cheese sauce so easy by boiling together sweet potato, carrots, and onions. Once they're boiled, you drain them, put them in a blender, add in some cashews, nutritional yeast, lemon juice, fresh garlic, onion powder, thyme, and a little bit of tamari and water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Yeah.
Wow.
And then, I mean, it's so much easier too, because then you can use that sauce as like a dipping sauce, as like a vegetable sauce. You can
Right.
use it to toss pasta in for like, mac and cheese, like we were just talking about. You can do so many different things with,
Mm-hmm.
just one recipe. That's what I think I love the most about plant-based eating, is that the versatility of everything is just so convenient.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there. Sometimes I'll have leftover soup and it's like a pureed soup. And one time I believe it was butternut squash, and I used that as a pasta sauce, and that was
Exactly.
incredible. And just last night we made a pizza and we had some leftover red lentil dal, and that's what we used as the base. We put that on the crust of the
Yeah,
pizza.
that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's so easy and helpful, and then you're cooking once and eating twice, but you're not eating the same thing. It just feels like
Yeah.
a different, it feels different. So yeah, that's a great idea actually. Might have to take that one. Lentil dal pizza.
It was pretty good. I'm gonna post it soon so you'll see what was on it. But yeah, it was fun. All right, so that's great to know. And one of the important things I think to mention, the places you talked about for nutrition science, they're free, right? Like all the information on their websites, it's all for free. Forks Over Knives, nutrition studies, and these places also provide like guides for how to get started that are free as well.
On that note, actually, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, so pcrm.org, it might be, I'm not sure if it's .com or .org. Also another great resource with so many free handouts, packages, things that are easy to read, really starting from the basics, like it's not too complicated. And I think they especially have maybe like a 30-day meal plan that you can download that they send you the recipes for. So yeah, all of this is readily available and really easy to use.
Yeah, and for people who love to be on their phones, you can get Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen app for free and PCRM's 21-day Kickstart app for free. Yeah. So let's see. There was something. So when you studied to be a pharmacist and then as a holistic nutritionist, um, how much did you learn about nutrition that you found to be beneficial in those studies? And what would you recommend as an excellent resource for the study of nutrition, say for somebody who is very interested in pursuing that as a career?
So in pharmacy school, there was a couple of nutrition-based courses, but I have to say that I probably learned very little. There was a moment of almost embarrassment when I started to study nutrition outside of pharmacy after I was diagnosed with MS, where I thought, how did I not know this stuff? You know, like how do I work in the health sciences and not know these basic things about nutrition? So I would say that I didn't learn much in pharmacy school about nutrition. When I did the holistic nutrition program, once I started doing my own research and reading things about MS, that's when I did the holistic nutrition program after the diagnosis, because I felt like there were so many areas of nutrition that I wanted to investigate, but I really needed a structured way of doing that. So I loved the program. I did it through the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. And I love the program because it really does delve into all kinds of approaches to nutrition. You learn a lot about the basics of nutrition, about macro and micronutrients, about how the body works, some anatomy. It's a well-rounded program. I felt like it complemented my pharmacy well, in that I had a very good understanding of Western healthcare and a westernized approach to dealing with disease, but then also a more holistic alternative approach to healthcare in terms of, doing things to help the body heal itself. I think either in isolation is a little narrow-minded. I think you need to have like a broader approach to everything, because nutrition is amazing, and I do think that food is medicine. It's a sentence I say all the time, and even though it's repeated and it's a cliche, it's absolutely true. But medicine, the kinds that we have invented, is also important. Modern medicine does amazing things. We're living longer because of it. It's just that we're living longer, but we're most definitely living sicker. A lot of us are. So I think that to get to the root cause of a lot of these chronic diseases that you're seeing, exploding all over developed countries, you really have to go to the source, which is often diet and nutrition. So, I really do think that doing the holistic nutrition program taught me a lot about food being involved in developing, different chronic conditions. Whereas before, I may have just thought, okay, this is your condition, how do we treat it? Coming from a perspective, like how do we fix the symptoms so you can go on while the root cause is kind of lingering and lurking in the background. I do think that the holistic nutrition program is a wonderful resource for people if they're interested in doing that kind of thing. But I also think now there are so many things like books, online courses, those kinds of things that are available that can really provide you with a basic nutritional education, without having to spend too much money or invest so much time, especially with, people like Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Barnard and Dr. McGregor and all of those people. Yeah, I think that those websites are amazing starting points to learn the basics.
Yeah, great. And let's see. So one thing I wanted to address, so we were talking about whole food plant-based nutrition and how it can help people with their chronic diseases. And you as a pharmacist, you work with medication. So could you tell us a little bit about like what you know about this and yeah.
Sorry, can you just rephrase that question?
Yeah. So you have a background as a pharmacist, and we've been talking about a whole food plant-based diet, and we've been addressing how it can be beneficial for chronic diseases. And I wondered if you want to talk a little bit about how it can affect people taking their medications.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah, just in general. Well, when you watch, these documentaries like Forks Over Knives, and the other names are eluding me now, but, these documentaries that follow people who, are struggling with being overweight or obesity, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart disease, having to get open heart surgery, those kinds of things. These documentaries follow those people from, just living the lives the way they were with all these health issues, and then changing their diets, and you see them coming off the medications. And no, that is true. Changing the way you eat can change your cholesterol. It can change your blood pressure. It can help you lose weight. It can help with blood sugar control if we're talking about type 2 diabetes. So I think we automatically think that, okay, when I'm diagnosed with these things or I have these issues, I have to go to medication. But even in pharmacy school, we are taught that, okay, when someone comes to you with a slightly elevated or a moderately elevated blood cholesterol, let's say, you try diet and lifestyle changes for like 2 to 3 months. If that doesn't work, you move on to medications. I feel like that's exactly how it should be. But, 2 to 3 months isn't a very long time. And I know that making like habitual changes and lifestyle changes takes a lot of work and support. So, I think that more emphasis needs to be put on the fact that, these markers that we look at, cholesterol, blood pressure, your A1C, all those kinds of things, that if we did focus more on diet as seriously as we do with medication, that I think we'd have a lot of people on fewer medications.
And you mentioned that you've had some experience with Doctors Rayapudi down in Buren.
Yes. So I was living in the Netherlands. So I moved, when I moved home from New York, we were here for a year, then we moved to the Netherlands for 2 years. And when I was in the Netherlands, a friend of mine here messaged me and said that her mom had gone to this like weekend retreat learning kind of thing about, plant-based eating. And I was like, what? Because before I had left, I felt like I was the only person kind of even dabbling in this in St. John. So I was so excited to hear that a physician, not just another person, but a pair of physicians were promoting this way of living. So I was so excited. So I reached out to them, told them about me. They told me about them. So when I moved home, I took my mom and dad, and we went out to Buren with them for one of their weekend learning retreats. So that was really great to see their approach. And I think the thing I took away from it the most was how if people are given enough information and then shown how these changes can change their lives, then their opinions shift. And I'm sure the Rayapudis have said this to you. I mean, you sit there with everybody on Friday night, and there are people there who are only there because their spouse made them go, who are only there because, their daughter made them go. That's like me and my dad's situation. And then by Sunday, they're like, oh my God, I can do this. I see now how I can do this and why I want to do this. So it's a really interesting transition, and they're doing amazing work, and they're spreading the message and helping people make really positive lifestyle and diet changes. And I just think it's absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
And so one thing I like to talk about with everybody who comes on the show is about food sustainability and security here in Newfoundland. And on a side, like kind of addressing that, how easy do you think it is for the average Newfoundlander to be whole food plant-based and to be able to access foods that will promote optimal health?
Yeah. I think that it is very possible. I always start with, like we talked about or touched on earlier, the very classic traditional Newfoundland recipes and the things that people like to make. And if you look at them, almost all of them can easily be switched or modifications made so that they are whole food plant-based. Things like potatoes, turnips, carrots, onions, beets, things that we have in our province can be used. And now with the new farmers markets and local farmers in the spring and the summer and the fall, we have an array of things available to us, fresh kale, like radishes, Brussels sprouts. Like I've seen all kinds of things at the farmers market. So I definitely think that a whole foods plant-based diet based mostly on seasonal vegetables is totally possible in Newfoundland. And I think as well that there is a misconception that vegetable or fruit or, whole food based diets are more possible in like tropical places or warm places. That is something that comes up often when I'm talking with people, but that's not true at all. There's so many definitely nutritious foods that you can get here. And yeah, because my family does really like more traditional Newfoundland soups. We use local vegetables all the time, and we make all kinds of different things, from shepherd's pie that I made a couple of nights ago with local potatoes, to sweet potato split pea soup, which we had a few weekends ago, to the Sunday dinner modification that I was telling you about. So there's definitely all kinds of things you can do with exactly what we have here.
And the shepherd's pie, what did you have in the center of that?
So I used, so the bottom of the shepherd's pie was lentils, onions, and carrots, and some celery and just a bunch of spices. And then the top was, I boiled some potatoes with the skin on, fiber, and mashed that and mixed into it some miso paste, nutritional yeast, almond milk, and crushed garlic. And then I just kind of layered them and baked it, and it was really delicious.
Yeah. So one idea people have as well is that to eat healthy, the foods are more expensive. So
Right.
what could you say about that?
I think that I don't agree with that. It's not that much. It depends on your approach, but I'll tell you one reason why it seems like it's a lot healthier, because in the last few years we've had this explosion of superfoods, where goji berries and eating blueberries in like when they're out of season, or cacao nibs, like all these more expensive superfoods, which essentially just means a food that's like lower in calories, higher in nutrients. But superfoods are like everywhere. Every vegetable is essentially a superfood. Every fruit is essentially a superfood. So I think that if you're eating seasonally and you're eating with what's available, you can totally do it on a budget. The supermarkets in St. John's now are, they're bringing in all kinds of stuff, like dried goods, like, things like quinoa and rice that you can get and that are always available, and they're really affordable. The other thing is that meat is so expensive. I remember, going to the supermarket and buying a package of chicken breasts for like $30 and having that last, however many days. But when you remove meat and a lot of like the cheeses from your diet, that clears up a lot of money to spend on other things. And vegetables go a really long way. Like I definitely think that it is doable on your budget. In our house, it's a little different because I'm always like developing recipes. So I'm always buying new things and trying new things. But I think for a family to do it, it's totally affordable. And I think there's actually a lot of people in Newfoundland now who can attest to that. Families who have made the switch. And things like beans are so cheap, especially at these bulk stores, like, dried lentils and dried chickpeas and kidney beans and those kinds of things. Super cheap. Same thing if you're buying like rice in bulk, very cheap. So yeah, I think it's doable.
Yeah. And for, say, new families, newcomers that have arrived here in Newfoundland, refugees or immigrant families, what advice would you give to them if they're looking to provide their family with food that is nutritional, that they can afford, and that they can easily access?
That's a really great question. That's a great question. I think that familiarity is probably going to be important to them as well. Everything is brand new, everything. So, sometimes we don't give meals and food the importance they deserve because it's such a source of comfort. So I think that the first thing I would suggest is that there are places that are bringing in, the same spices or brands of, certain kinds of things that they're looking for. So, the, specific aisles in like Dominion or Sobeys or our grocery stores have, oh my God, they've improved significantly in terms of the availability of international foods. And I would say also bulk stores, again, like the bulk barn for spices, beans, grains, those kinds of things. And then also to kind of speak up and ask for the manager and say, these are the things I'm looking for. Can you bring them in? Because I have actually seen that happen. I was in a grocery store a few months ago, and I noticed that they had a whole new range of dried goods in, And I just asked someone, I was like, you must be getting new products. And they said, no, these are things that have been requested. So that's one thing. And then I would also say to stick to whole grains, beans, legumes, and seasonal vegetables. So affordable. And then in the summer, the spring, summer, and early fall, the farmers market, you can get a lot of really nutritious, fresh vegetables for low cost. And there's also different ethnic foods and stuff that you can purchase at the farmers market. So yeah, I think that's what it would be.
And so just as a last thing, I'm going to talk about your website, but before that, for somebody you've piqued their interest and they want to start, they're here in Newfoundland, maybe they're in St. John's or in a rural community, what last advice would you give them?
I would say become familiar or seek out education on a whole foods plant-based diet. So what that means, a whole foods plant-based diet based on, vegetables, fruits, starches, whole grains, legumes, nuts or seeds. Knowing what your food groups are, because it is a shift. You have to shift the way that you think. And then the second thing I like to talk about, especially when I was doing cooking classes, is to shift the way you look at your plate as well. Because things don't look the same. We're so used to having like a hunk of meat and then like a side. Whereas a whole food plant-based eating is a little different in that your plate kind of changes. You might just have all of one kind of thing or a bunch of little things. It changes for the better in my mind. There's so much more flavor. There's so much more going on. But just a shift in your thinking. And then the third thing that I would say is before you dive in, and if you are excited and you're willing to do this, amazing. It's going to be way better than you ever imagined. But I would say to sit down and think about 1 week. And if that's too much, even one day, what would one day like? What will we have for breakfast? What will we have for lunch? What will we have for supper? And then to prepare that accordingly and to have patience with yourself, because I have worked with individuals who are so motivated and exciting and they dive right in. But, on Wednesday at, 6 p.m., they find themselves totally starving, not knowing what to do. They haven't prepared anything. They want to have rice, but they don't know how to cook rice. So there are different like levels of understanding. And I think that you just have to start where you are and start with the next meal. And just know that there are resources out there, and also like cooking clubs or starting like, some kind of potluck where everybody brings something. I know the Rye Pooties, they have that going on out in Buren, or they used to anyways. So, there are lots of options, and also to use social media to its benefit. Social media can be a negative thing. We talk about it very negatively when we reference social media, but it can also be positive. You can find plant-based food groups on Facebook. I know I'm a part of a few. I love when people come follow my Facebook page. I think it's like ashleymadden.ca is the Facebook page. Where I share recipes and other links from other people's recipes and news articles, and just find support. If you can't find support in your house, I promise you can find support online and through people like you and me. I mean, I'm just thrilled when someone emails me and either asks, can you tell me how to make this kind of recipe, or can you tell me where to find this information? So most people who are in this world, like yourself and like myself and the Rye Pooties, we're in it because we're passionate about it. We love it. We love talking about it. We love sharing information, knowledge, recipes. So I think that if people are aware that it is a really welcoming community, with acceptance and patience and support, that, I think they'll feel like they can do it.
And would you say that it's something I find is a lot of people think that they're giving up so much, and that's kind of a hurdle to go over. Like even if they're not feeling well, they feel like it's too hard to change. Would you have any tips for like how to approach it or how to change your mindset if you are interested?
I think knowing yourself first is important. So again, for me, I'm not very good, or I don't like gradual change. When I've decided that I'm going to do something, it has to be all or nothing. Not that that's a great way of doing it. That's just my personality. So, but for other people that I've worked with that, all of the changes at once is too much. It's too overwhelming, and it's a deterrent. So knowing what kind of changes you are able to do is one thing. And so for a lot of people, that's like a step-by-step process. So I would say, there's different layers. First, know the kinds of foods that you can eat. Don't think about what you can't eat. Let's look at what you can eat and then focus on that. So I think that keeps you in a positive headspace, and it just makes you feel like you can do it. When you think about what you can't have, it's just this negative feeling. And then I have tried to find ways to word this so that it feels like more authentic and people believe me more, but it's hard. But my message is always that you're not going to be deprived. You're going to feel great. You're going to love the food. It's going to be the best thing that you've ever done. It's the best thing that I've ever done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we talked about resources, and Ashley, you have a really great website. It's Rise.Shine.Cook.ca, and I'm going to provide a link and the video information. You're also on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter. Am I missing anything?
I think that's all of them. It's hard to keep up on. I update people mostly on Facebook and Instagram. So I'm currently doing a lot of recipe development for hopefully a cookbook in 2019. So stay tuned for that. And I love getting recipe requests. It's like one of the best things for me creatively, because sometimes those creative juices run a little dry. So yeah, I'd love for people to reach out.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming to speak with us today. And like I said, I'm going to provide a link to your website, and I'm also going to provide links to some of the other websites that we mentioned, and some of the websites for people who have MS, so they can look up for themselves, do some research if they're interested, and look at nutrition and how it affects MS. Right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'd like just one thing I forgot. This is a free resource on my website. If you sign up there, you get a free recipe cookbook. I think it's like 12 breakfast recipes.
Yeah.
So all like whole food, plant-based, and free. So it's a great starting place if you're just like wondering how to get into some things.
Yeah, and I think you said before you do some gluten-free stuff, and I believe that one is gluten-free and oil-free. So yeah,
oil-free, plant-based. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible resource for anyone. So yeah, thank you for all the work that you're doing, and thanks for coming to speak to us.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. This is amazing, and thank you for inviting me to have this conversation.
All right, well, have a good year. Oh, and a good move to Taiwan.
Yes, about to move, just to Taiwan, not far.
Not too far.
I hope to, there's actually a lot of vegan stuff happening in Taiwan, so I kind of hope to get into the community there, see what's happening, see what I can do there. But I think that I'll mostly be doing, recipe development and sharing more online, because I'll be there, and not so much. I'm going to miss the community here because it's really getting going now, and I love it. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, well, you'll have to come back and visit.
Yes, for sure.
All right.
Thanks so much.